Hey everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. It's Dan, Nico, and Jus. It's October, it's scary season, and we're back at you with another bonus episode. Dan, what are we talking about today?
Today we are discussing horror in music.
So, Nico, to keep this one on the straight and narrow, this one is going to be about music that is horror, but not from horror movies, right?
Right, yeah, we're taking a look into music that could, subjectively, if not objectively, be described itself as horrific without the addition of a movie being attached to it.
All right. So, really quick, I think we have to start from square one here. What makes scary music scary? Just in your opinion.
So I would say things that make music on its own scary, I think you have to start with the idea of dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who are maybe not necessarily super familiar with either music theory or just the dictionary definition of dissonance, you could think about it as when things are almost discordant with each other, clashing. There's no kind of natural harmony to it. It sounds off. And embracing that is a really key part of making something sound scary.
Okay. Dan, your thoughts on this?
I definitely agree. I think that dissonance, and not only in harmony, but also in rhythmic dissonance too, kind of comes into play as well.
For sure.
And then I think another big part of it is lyrical content. Sometimes, obviously, in a lot of pop music, and not pop as in the genre pop, but as in popular music, lyrics are one of the most important parts, the things that people listen to. So I think the lyrical content also plays a big part in what is considered horror or not.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I guess, kind of as a follow-up here, all three of us, we're all musicians. So if someone said, hey, can you write a song for me that is scary, what would be your first step in the writing process? Or throughout the writing process, what would you be sure to do? Or it's one thing that you could do. I think from my own personal perspective, I wrote a song with Dan that was about, I was going through some night terrors where I just could not sleep. And I decided, that we were going to write a song about that. And one thing that I wanted to make sure to do was kind of crystallize how that felt. So I guess it was a little bit easier because it was about an experience that I'd already gone through, but just taking that and trying to get the same feeling, but from sounds. So, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but I really enjoy the sound of like a real kind of crunchy, dark synth, dark synth part 6, that plugin or whatever. And I'm fucking around, but like, I enjoy kind of sounds that are not natural sounding. Like, for example, I think you can still have natural sounding sounds, but something has to be done. Like, like just a regular old acoustic guitar playing very, as to Nico's point, harmonious fucking notes. That's not scary to me. But if the stuff is more, like if there's some dissonance in there and something's not quite right, or like Nico has talked about before, the notes being just a little bit off, like that can cause some real issues. But Dan, I want to know from your perspective as well.
I think if I were to write a horror themed song, I would start by asking myself what the goal or purpose of the song is.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I guess we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but I think that there are different ways, and we kind of already did a little bit of creating that sort of horror, whether it's, harmonic dissonance, rhythmic dissonance, lyrical content. So I would sort of personally get a framework in my head about what I want the song to be about. And then I would go, okay, how can I achieve that? If I want the song to just be like, just straight up in your face, scary, I would start writing lyrics that are just scary about murdering people and, whatever. And then I would also probably go with some like, minor scale, of course, and then, adding in some dissonance as well. But if I wanted one that was more of like a kind of spooky vibe rather than just straight up like scary, maybe I would not have the lyrical content be quite as scary, but still have the dissonance or maybe drone notes or something in the background or things like that.
All right, Nico, from a guitarist point of view, is it any different or much the same?
So, as a guitarist, I think production plays a huge role in how scary something sounds. And in the direction that a lot of modern guitar music has gone lately, can I just say I am astonished that horror movies don't regularly use distorted, down-tuned guitars as a factor for like jump scares and stuff, because the way that jump scares really work, it's not the what's on screen, it's the sudden increase of volume, like whatever they use to really just shock you there, and suddenly having just an aggressive, biting, almost crushing tone out of nowhere, I think would do a lot more work than the general standard like violin trills, but that's just me.
Okay. So we kind of talked about it a little bit when Dan mentioned, lyrics about maybe killing people, that kind of stuff. But what other lyrics do you consider to be scary, Nico? I know for me personally,
Sure.
stuff about like worshiping an ancient demon, that always gets me. Anything about, being a vampire and doing vampire things, that's another thing that I like. But how about you?
So I'm going to lean on my previous response and again point towards the direction of production. I think anything you say can be scary depending on how it fits within the song. And something that is a little bit more of a recent development, I think, is, ASMR. Imagine if you were listening to something and then suddenly you have the feeling of someone actually whispering in your ear. They could be saying some shit like, I love the way your skin feels. And that might be some like, tender loving moment between you and someone you care about. But if that's just in the middle of something that's already kind of hectic or uncanny, that's going to send a shiver down your spine. That's going to get you. Similarly, I think there is a notion about sort of the aspect of the uncanny and how we use that, but I'm going to save that for a future talking point.
Okay. Well, I kind of want to change gears here a little bit so we kind of have an idea in our heads of what is like a scary song or scary music. But can things that are not scary still kind of fit into horror? Think of a song, for example, like, I don't know, we reviewed the Bloody Hammers album. A lot of their songs were very bright, energetic, punk-ish in a way.
Almost campy in a way.
In a good way, yes.
Campy and
Yeah, in
fun,
a good way.
And, what was it? The Brain That Wouldn't Die?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You have songs like that. They don't really conform to a lot of what we talked about in terms of like dissonance or, things like that. Can stuff like that still be enveloped in the horror genre, though? Dan, do you think?
I do think so. I think I believe we talked about in a previous bonus episode a while ago about like what is horror. I think that horror is a pretty wide open genre, and I think that even it doesn't necessarily have to scare you or terrify you necessarily. So even something that is related to dead things or a horrific situation, even if there's a humor twist to it or campy twist to it, I think still falls in the horror category. So I definitely think something like that is still horror music, even though there's not really dissonance. The lyrical content isn't made to incite fear in you. It's still talking about kind of scary things, just in a fun way.
All right. And Nico, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Think about all the various times you've watched a horror movie and there's like a doll in the corner and suddenly you hear a music box. Music boxes themselves are not scary. They're pretty quaint, they're fragile, they're very light and airy, but the second you hear, I don't know, the melody to Do You Know the Muffin Man or whatever the fuck, in context with everything else, that becomes scary. That becomes the part of the experience that stands out to you.
Okay. And, not to go back, but that was one thing that I was struggling to remember about, like what could make something scary. I think when you have that juxtaposition of something that's seemingly innocent, like a music box, up against like a much more either an evil sounding background or something like that, that too can be, pretty scary at times. But I agree with the points that both you and Dan have made, taking into account Fresh Prince and,
Hey, West Philadelphia, born and raised.
and, DJ Jazzy Jeff, A Nightmare on My Street. Like he's rapping about Freddy Krueger in the whole song. Like the song is not really scary. It's actually funny in a lot of places, but I still kind of count that within the horror genre because he's talking about horror topics. And I think, again, not everything immediately falls that way, kind of to the point, if we're talking about coming back from death or something like that could very well be like a religious song. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be like a horror song, or you could talk about coming back from death through the lens of like a zombie or something like that. And now it's a horror song. Now that's what it is. So I do think that. Now, to follow, sometimes we have songs that just listening to them on their own, you may not assume those are horror songs, but maybe they're paired with a music video. Remember, we said we were talking about films, not music videos that they couldn't be with. So if they're paired with a music video, does that change things? Can that turn something that's not horror and make it horror? Dan?
I kind of go both ways. Yes, I think so, because the video is part of the overall experience, I think. And an artist, when they create the video and release it, it's, well, again, just part of the experience. Obviously, you can listen to the song without the video, but oftentimes the video is there to either help accentuate what the music is already talking about and the point that it's getting at, or offer a different perspective of said music. So I do think that it can influence the genre. And there's a couple music videos out there that I wouldn't really consider the concept of the song to be horror, but when paired with the video, it becomes horror. Like Sleep Token, I think, has a video that does that for me.
I was literally about to just say the biggest thing that just jumps into my mind right now is Alkaline by Sleep Token, because you listen to that and it's like, okay, like she's not acid nor alkaline, like the lyrics don't always necessarily lend themselves to something that horrific, but the music video, which by the way, if you haven't seen it, go fucking see it. The music video is fucking immense. You know what I mean? It's insane. So that leads me to put that into there. But I think you're right. Now, I will put a little caveat there that it has to be like official. Like it has to be the artist who did it. Like it's not going to be your fucking anime music video where you put
I was about to fucking say
where you put like some song on that shit and like, look, I put like My Immortal over High School of the Dead. Oh no, look what happened here. Like no. Like it's got to be the artist's intent. I think that's a major point. Nico, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything you were both saying. And the song or music video that comes to mind in my brain that will not die yet is actually the music video for Purity Ring's Begin Again. I am a complete fanboy for Purity Ring. Love everything they do. But the thing that struck me the most about that video is it's almost like a short film more than it is like a music video. It takes the content of the song and turns it into this almost kind of like surreal, nightmarish Ari Aster type joint with a lot of unsettling imagery and a lot of stuff that just comes out of nowhere and really just rubs you the wrong or right way. And I think that oftentimes songs like that and songs like Alkaline are elevated because of the accompaniment that the music video brings. And I think when that happens, it's something really special because I don't need to tell y'all how many music videos there are out there that just don't fucking work. But when they work in the context of horror, it is something truly special.
Okay. And I want to keep talking about, some of these artists. So Dan and Nico, this is kind of open to the class, really. What types of horror do you think are covered by certain artists or maybe specific songs from specific artists? I'm going to kind of take the lead here and say that Ice Nine Kills, they are like a horror band, right? Like they literally, like a huge number of their songs, especially for the last 2 albums, they're all based on horror movies,
And books.
Yes, and books as well. So they've got like a trillion different things they talk about. But one song in particular that I really like is Communion of the Cursed. It's like based on The Exorcist. So I think that particular song tackles possession really well, which obviously, like The Exorcist is a possession movie. The song itself has a really cool kind of back and forth, almost representing like a metaphorical fight, like fighting the demon for control of the host. That's one in particular that I like to highlight because I think it executes the point like super fucking well. But Dan, do you have any you want to highlight or point out?
For me, one of my favorite recent bands is Spiritbox. And I think that they are like, if I were to equate them to a horror subgenre, they'd be like psychological horror to me,
Ooh.
where lyrically, they're not just talking about murdering people and just outright, oh, hey, we're horror. I mean, there's a lot of dissonance in a lot of their songs like Rule of Nines, where there's like this drone note that goes throughout the whole first verse that really puts you on edge. There's rhythmic dissonance, like we talked about before. There's a lot of things that give you the horror vibe without outright screaming, hey, we are horror, which isn't a bad thing. If, a group like Ice Nine Kills that does that, you look at their videos, you see everything that they do. Yeah, they're clearly horror. But I think that Spiritbox does that very well too, without being quite as outright horror. And then also when you pair them with some of their music videos, some of their music videos are straight up horror films. Like they're crazy.
They're fucking scary.
Yeah.
Holy roller, holy
Yeah.
shit.
So they're one of my favorite like horror inspired bands.
Nico, how about you?
Yeah, I want to echo everything Dan says. Spiritbox is absolutely one of my favorite bands, just period. Check them out if you haven't already, if you're into heavier stuff. But the stuff that really gets me the most, it builds off of a phrase that I'm going to borrow from Adam Neely. If you've ever seen him on YouTube, he's a jazz musician and just a music YouTuber. Repetition legitimizes. And that applies to the sense of like horror music as well. And this is going to be something that I'm going to talk about when we bring up some of our favorites or most scariest things that we've ever listened to. But there is one album in particular by a band called Swans. The album's called The Seer. It is a nearly perfect album that I will never listen to again because it was such a harrowing experience. It had, in the aspect of repetition legitimizing, it felt like the entire time I was listening to it that I was part of some sort of cultist ritual. And I can't really give any higher praise or warning than that.
So that's like the scariest shit you ever heard then.
It's
Oh,
intriguing.
I see.
I also want to mention Sleep Token as well. And I know Justin and I mentioned them a little bit ago, but I want to give them a little more love because I think they're really, really cool and really creative. And again, if Spiritbox is psychological horror to me, then Sleep Token is cosmic horror. A lot of their songs don't sound horrific. There's not really any dissonance, or more so than normal. There's not a lot of lyrical content that would be necessarily considered horror. But the whole concept of the band is these guys who always wear masks and you don't know who they are, you don't see their faces or anything, and they worship a god named Sleep. A lot of the songs, especially off one of their new singles and then a previous album, some of them are like almost like love ballads or very, pop inspired, very chill songs, but a lot of it is relating to worshiping this god and giving yourself up to this god and everything, which is kind of similar to like a cosmic horror.
Absolutely.
Kind of.
Bro, you stole the fucking words right out of my mouth. Would you believe it? No.
I'm sorry.
You said it so well.
I'm
Said
sorry.
it so well. Because I was gonna, and I still am going to, because I'm not done with it yet, but I'm just a part I'm gonna say that's gonna fit in so perfect with what you just said, because it was literally point for point, and you'll see it when I talk about it. But, and you're right, Sleep Token are fucking awesome. But are they the scariest shit you've ever heard? And if not, what is the scariest shit you've ever heard? Not in a movie.
For me, I got to give it up to Lorna Shore's single, To the Hellflyer. Yeah, they came out with, they have a new vocalist, and dude is terrifying. His screaming capability is ridiculous. And I mean, it's incredibly impressive, but especially like at the end, he sounds literally like a possessed demon boar coming out of hell or something. And it's nuts. So I'm gonna give it up to that.
For me, and I tried so hard to find any artist that does this, but I couldn't find one that quite matches. So, given my background, I was going to say my backstory, but I'm a real boy. So, what scares me the most is chanting. Like a good old fashioned chant with some scary ass, shit going on in the background. That'll scare the
Hey,
fuck out
Justin,
of
you
me.
should listen to the Seer. Get real fucked up and listen to the Seer. Do what you won't, no balls.
I mean,
Wow.
balls to the side here. It's one of those things that just scares me because of what scares me is something primal. Like a primal ancient god or being that doesn't follow the rules of this universe or doesn't follow the rules of my belief system. Like that's the shit that has scared the shit out of me. So like chanting kind of in relation to that, with like minimal and sometimes, more like a good drum that could scare me too, with Dan. And I liked what Dan talked about earlier with rhythmic dissonance, because I think that plays a big part in it. So you get that going, you get the chants going. That has scared a mess out of me, bro. And there's one particular work. I was so scared I didn't even bother to see what it was called, bro. I just shut that shit off. But and that's why I can't remember what it is. But something that just has that. There's something, it just like triggers something in me that's like, because chant is multiple people, and it's like, bro, something's going on here. I don't need to be a part of this. Like, I need to go right now. So
Listen to the Seer.
that's what scares the mess out of me. That's what scares the brakes off of me. But we're going to kind of, bring this now. We're going to bring it home a little bit. So we talked about some of our favorites already, but if you could, and again, this is going to be tough because there's a lot. You can call out, a couple different bands or a couple artists that are some of your favorite, but put up one track, one song. Let's see if you can do it. Start with you, Nika.
So the one that I am going to go for is one that I feel probably a lot of music students know. It is Penderecki's Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm.
And it
That's a
is
terrifying
something...
one.
It, like Dan said, it sounds just absolutely horrific. It is not an easy song to listen to. Even still, now that I've heard it a number of times, literally just thinking about it right now sent a chill down my spine. It is the grand pappy of all violin trills and discordant orchestral sections and uncomfortable timbres. And the title really says it all. It's something that was made as almost a lament for the absolute terror of those who died in one of, if not the worst days of war ever.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is a fucking... First off, I listened to the track, and I think that's one of those where you can't separate it from the...
You really can't.
From the meaning or from the event that, like...
Subject matter?
Yeah, like, you can't separate the two. And knowing where it's drawing that sound from and then hearing that sound, like, it's so easy to, like, in your mind, hear, like, like the violin, like the shrill sounds and shit like that to be screams and stuff like that, like... It's very powerful when you hear that. So I definitely agree with what you said.
I think everyone
Nico.
should listen to it, regardless of if you like horror. I think it's just something you should experience.
Like, it's a very effective way, I think, to, like, not that you could ever really, like, oh, this measures the terror adequately. You know what I'm saying? It's difficult to do that. But I think if you want to give somebody a window into, like, how horrific of a moment that was, like, that piece is a good window into that. But Dan, how about you?
I think I'm going to... that's tough. I'm going to go with the band I've talked about, Justin and I have talked about already, Sleep Token. There's a recent single called Alkaline for a couple of reasons. One, I just think sonically it just sounds cool as fuck. Two, the music video, as we kind of discussed before, is really cool. I'm a sucker for cosmic horror. It's my favorite genre of horror movies. And I think that the music video does an amazing job of being cosmic horror and just wonderful. But then three, even when you take it out of a horror context, it's amazing. Like the lyrical content is just really cool. And I mean, again, like lyrically, it's not horror at all. Like it's almost like a love song. Like at least the lyrics are, and just the metaphors and everything that they use are just really, really cool. And then when you package it all together in one song, I think they did an amazing job on it. So Alkaline by Sleep Token for me.
It's kind of funny because I actually also was going to pick a Sleep Token song, but I'm not going to do that now, Dan. Instead, I'm going to do it off the cuff kind of thing. But first, since you are kind of removing me, not playing, since I'm choosing to do a different artist, the one line I wanted to big up from Sleep Token, and what I was going to say earlier in the pod, the very first song I ever heard from Sleep Token was called The Offering. That was the first song.
That song fucking whips.
That was the first. Nico, you remember when I was like, bro, peep this track? And you were like, yes. And just, there's not too many lyrics in the song, but one of the lyrics is, this is a giving, an offering in your favor, a sacrifice in your name. But I know you've got a taste, so just take a bite of me. Turn the page once again. And like this whole song, they keep repeating that. Take a bite, take a bite. In the end, it ends with, so take a bite. I want to know. I want to. And then they say like, take a bite. Take a bite. Like, and it happens again. And obviously I'm not doing it with all like the big massive guitars and everything else in the song, but it's just like, first time I heard it, I was like, oh, this is like a love song. And then all of a sudden, like I really listened to it, and then they had a little visualizer for it on YouTube with like people in like a circle dancing. I'm like, oh, fuck me, no. Like these dudes are like worshiping some kind of shit, bro. I was like, oh shit. So that was wild. But no, the song I'm going to put up is a song that many people may not think is a horror song, but I've always viewed it in the context of a horror song. The song is called Smother by DOtD. And the reason why I put this song up is largely lyrical. I think that it's one of those that the context in which I heard the song and how I've always viewed it. So there's a lyric, the lyric that stands out the most to me is, you know, in the darkness, I will meet my creators and they will all agree that I'm a suffocator. And, you know, the song is talking about like.
That's what he says?
That's what they say. That's
the
what she says.
The song's so fucking pretty. I never actually listened to that.
Have you never seen me and Dan? Like whenever that line comes up, me and Dan are like, I don't know about this. But yeah, but then there's more because, you know, it's like, for my bones have found a place to lie down and sleep where all my layers can become reeds. All my limbs can become trees. All my children become me. What a mess I leave to follow. And then.
Fuck me.
And then like those lyrics to me are just so dark that it's so easy to visualize that and see that in like an almost kind of like demonic sense, you know, where you have like in the darkness, you know, coming from a dark place. And it's like a duality, because I don't think the song is intentionally meant to be horrific like that. Maybe it is, but that's the way I've always seen it. So if you haven't heard it, check it out. It's a good ass song. Good ass song. But any other points that y'all want to make before we wrap this one up? Any other points about, you know, horror that's in music that's not from like a film score or anything else like that?
I do have one, and it's a kind of a recommendation. I think something that is really, really fun to explore in music is the more sort of like industrial sounding stuff. And towards that end, one artist that I have to recommend that almost feels like if the Otherworld from Silent Hill had a soundtrack beyond just the radio static is Author and Punisher. It feels like you are just in a carnival of rusty barbed wire that is slowly churning towards you, and it just every track from them feels immense. So give them a listen too.
Well, all right. That's been it from us here at Don't Open That Door. Be sure to tune in next week. We're going to have another bonus episode for you. We hope everyone's having an amazing October, an amazing Halloween season. Hey, check us out. We're going to be doing a lot of different themed weeks. The theme is horror around the world.
Specifically 4 of them.
So yeah, it's going to be great. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We're at DOtD Horror. We're also on Facebook. Don't open that door. And check out our website, DOtDhorror.com. But yeah, that's been it from Dan, Nico, and Jus. Take care of each other. And as always, dear listeners, don't open that door. Bye.